Karaki's, a word older than any civilization that has existed in human history, it's about to change, once more. Like mountain, it will rise, like continent, it will move, and eventually, the tide will change. The wheel of fate is churning, the nobility are waning, the resources are draining, and the people are coming together. Which way will you spin the wheel, Lancer? Hello viewers and welcome to a brand new episode of Trashtalk on Lancer, Field Guide on the Karakan Trade Baronies edition, where I talk stuff about mech. It has been almost a year since the last episode, and now I feel very old, so anyway let's talk about the mech. In this episode, White Witch, from Smith Shimano Corpro. Thesania agrippina is a species of moth in the family Arabidae, more commonly named as the White Witch. Other common names included ghost moth, great grey witch, and great owlet moth. The White Witch moth is among the competitor for the title of largest insect, but that's only true when judging by the wingspan of almost 30 centimeters, while Atlas moth and Hercules moth have greater wing area instead. One story on how its name originated was that early naturalists collected specimens of birds and bats with shotguns, and White Witch is a big enough target that one would think it's an easy shot. It is, but the cloud of pellets often only went through the wings, not the main body, which is tiny, and so the moth would continue to sail along, an unkillable witch. Named after the moth, the White Witch frame is absolutely the last thing you want to shoot at, because you are only going to piss it off. Looking at its stats, White Witch is a big boy that at first glance looks kinda average in toughness, but it has a lot of repair caps and still moves very frighteningly fast. Its sensor range is terrible, but with its save target, it can cause a lot of troubles. However, you definitely do not want to get hacked in this thing, as it can't really handle heat well at all. Its base systems point is also kinda just average. Instead of doing this normally, I'm going to skip ahead a bit because this is what makes the White Witch shines. Ferroreactive armor makes it so that every time White Witch takes damage from any source, including itself, whether it actually deal damage or not, gains +1 armor for the rest of the scene with a maximum of 6. That's ridiculous. Of course, you have to actually get shot and cut first, and White Witch before armor is only just averagely tough, so there would be a period of time before White Witch becomes almost immune to bullets. Anyway, let's move on to its traits, of which there's 4. Rooted, White Witch can immobilize itself as a protocol for 2 turns, and when it is immobilized by any means, it gains resistance to kinetic damage and cannot be sent flying. Harden, when White Witch braces, it also gains 5 over shield before taking damage. Fluid burst, when an ally in range 2 takes damage, White Witch can take a bit of the damage and hit itself with it. And finally, Guardian, you know what this does at this point. With all these traits, a prime strategy of White Witch would be to use its speed to move to a strategic spot quickly, and just immobilize or brace itself against the hailstorm of bullet. This of course might disencourage GM to shoot at the White Witch, which is why it still has Guardian to make shooting ally hiding behind it harder, and even if they do, the White Witch will get tougher eventually, and with its speed, it can really harass enemies that refuse to attack it. As for its weapon mounts, it has 2, 1 flex and 1 heavy. Onto its core power, it can push ferroreactive shell to hyperactive mode, which for the rest of the scene, turn the maximum armor for White Witch to a goddamn 12, and +2 instead of +1 each time it takes a hit. Also, every time you get hit, you explode, dealing damage to everything nearby, and when it maxed out, you explode even harder and hand all the shit to people you exploded. However, your armor get reduced to nothing after that, but you can get the ferro ball rolling again until the scene ends. Basically, when this core power is activated, it turns the White Witch from a defensive defender to an offensive one. Your goal now is just run straight towards the enemies and get their attention by brutally fucking them up, forcing them to make the choice of focusing their attention on you or your allies, and either way it's gonna be bad for them. Obviously, I do not recommend hugging your allies when this is on, but I do recommend asking your allies to shoot at you when you are near exploding to use you as a reusable manticore, because you are most likely immune to their damage at that point, and it's hilarious. As for the rest of the license, you get ferrofluid lance and pinning spire in the first section. Ferrofluid lance is an average main melee weapon with average damage and average reach, that may also, on hit, get both you and the target immobilized and cannot be moved in any other ways. You are probably wondering why you even want this, but it's a lot useful than you think. Also, on any following turn, you can break this immobilized status with a protocol and send the enemy flying, but the enemy can also break this by hitting you, and during this immobilization, you are always considered to be in melee range for the enemy, and this immobilized status cannot be removed any other way. This of course, means that unlike Impaler, you can immobilize even Ultra for a full round and then some with this weapon, or at least, waste action on you to move, which makes you tougher, and of course, when you don't want to do this whole thing, you can just not do it and use the ferrofluid lance like a war pike with slightly shorter reach. That's actually very good. Pinning Spire does exactly what it said. With a quick action, you and an enemy in range 3 is immediately immobilized, no save or anything, and also it just follows the rest of ferrofluid lance rule except for the sending enemy flying part. Basically, Pinning Spire is ferrofluid lance but puts all in on immobilizing the enemy and is a systems, so even when you are not using ferrofluid lance, you can just get this instead for similar effect. Aside from White Witch frame itself, you get Sympathetic Shield and Camus Razor in the second section. Sympathetic Shield, like Argonaut Shield but funkier, is a shield-based systems in which you can spend a limited charge to apply over shield equal to half of the allied character's health in range 5, which can be really big, or if they don't invest in hull at all, kinda tiny. However, all damage applied to this overshield also applies to you as kinetic damage. This is important, remember this, before damage reduction of any sort. Essentially, it is a weirder and longer range Argonaut shield, with limited charge so you can't use it all the time. More importantly, it converts the damage to kinetic, and well, you probably know where this is going. It's also an overshield, so your ally is not going to take any actual damage with it around, and that's good. Camus Razor, just take the hit, is a systems that lets you charge up an intensive magnetic force with a quick action, and as a reaction, when an ally within range 5 and line of sight get targeted by an action, not just skirmish or barrage, that deal kinetic or explosive damage, you instead become the target of the action. If the action involves area of effect, the area pattern must cover you now, and even if the action originally could not hit you, like a melee attack, it still must consider you as a target, and still hit you actually. This is basically the better version of Stasis Bolt in a way, always letting you protect your allies, but also makes you the target instead, and although the wording of the systems is a bit weird, I'm fairly certain you need to prime the systems each time after expending the reaction because otherwise that's stupidly powerful. In the final section, you get Ferrospike Barrier and Retort Loop. Ferrospike Barrier, it's really just a spiky ball. You basically just spray a surge of liquid metal to a nearby area, and while it does nothing at first, it hardens on your next turn as a size 2 hard cover. Also, the first time anyone moves or gets pushed into it in a round, they take damage because it's spiky, but you can't make like an army of them around, so you gotta put them at the best spot possible. It's basically Caltrip Launcher, but it also works as hard cover, just try not to hug it too much. Finally, Retort Loop is a heavy cannon that's powered by pain apparently. It deals tiny amount of damage with 0 charge at a decent range, but anytime you take damage, you can store up to 3 charges with it, which can increase its reliable to a maximum of 6, knockback to 3, and damage to 3 plus 3d6 kinetic, which is very impressive and fit White Witch very well. Once fired however, hit or miss, you lose all charges and have to start over again, which shouldn't be a problem for White Witch, and any other defender frame that is asking to get hit for their allies. And that's all on White Witch, a speedy defender frame that just wants to take all the damage for its allies so it can then explode. Its license is full of things that actually do very well in protecting your allies or immobilizing the enemies, but most of them involves you getting hit instead. That said, these are still very useful defender systems, and I could see many other frames be able to use them quite well. So, if you want to play a frame that screams shoot me and fully punishes the GM when they do not shoot you or do anyway, White Witch might just be what you are looking for. Anyway, that's all for now, and I will see you all next time. Hello there, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell button. If you really want to support my channel, you could visit my Patreon page, or buy me some coffee, links in the description. Anyway, have a nice day.